Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of B Sharp and C. Today, I want you to be sharp and see that it is not rock and roll that is necessarily dying, but organic music as a whole. And that encompasses many genres. I want you to think about these names: Tone Loc, LL Cool J, Run DMC, The Beastie Boys, Ice-T, Eminem, Dr. Dre, Naughty by Nature, The Fugees, Salt and Pepper, Ice Cube. So why did I just mention a bunch of hip-hop bands? Because this is when hip-hop had something in it that we like to call creativity. And wait, ready? Music. I essentially gave up on hip-hop the minute they said, you know what? Let's just focus on beats, rapping, samples, and loops, and less melody. One of my favorite hip-hop songs, right? Gangster's Paradise. It had a hook. It had a chorus where there was singing, and there was actually a choral arrangement in the background. It had so much creativity in it. But that does not happen today. So why do I start this episode talking about hip-hop? Because, world, please listen. It's not rock and roll that's dying. It is organic music that is dying. It just so happened that rock and roll leaned on the organic nature of music for decades, while the rest of the world was at least using some digital technology in their music. Rock and roll wasn't. It just wasn't, so it suffered the most. But which genre was leaning the most on loops, samples, beats, more than anyone? Excluding electronica, which has always been underground. But it's hip-hop. Hip-hop was. They had the easiest transition into the digital world. Thus, in the digital world today, hip-hop is a step ahead of the game. All right? That's why it still reigns today. And rock is almost a distant memory. Let me ask you a question. How many writers and journalists do you know, can you name, who staunchly use a typewriter instead of a PC with a word processing app? How many journalists in 2021 have that motto, I will only use a typewriter? None. So what's the real issue here? The problem is that music can be produced. Yes, let me just say that again. I'm going to emphasize the word. It can be produced without ever having to use an instrument. Now, you can't really do that with rock and roll unless you just take bits and pieces of loops. But no one wants to listen to rock and roll where there is no artist. That you just took guitar solos and backing tracks from other people. But the music world was ready for this transition. The music world was ready for the transition. The world itself was ready for the transition into the digital world. And it wasn't necessarily just rock and roll that suffered. When you really stop and analyze it, it was every genre that relied on organic music. Smooth jazz suffered. Sade. Country or folk, to some degree, has suffered. Gordon Lightfoot used to be a household name. Although folk music was never the sexiest music, there were folk singers who were ridiculously famous. Bob Dylan was considered folk by some, right? But that type of music suffered. Hip-hop suffered. Run DMC. Perfect example. Listen to Run DMC now. Go to YouTube, put in Run DMC, and listen to them. It's almost rock and roll, for crying out loud, the way they arranged their music. Progressive rock suffered. The Deep Purples, the Pink Floyds. Alternative music suffered. Every genre has suffered to some degree, but the one who has suffered the least is the one that started decades before the actual transition into the digital world. Hip-hop was already relying on that type of music creation. Therefore, the transition was the easiest for them. The ones that leaned on analog sound and organic music the most suffered the most. But it's funny because to a degree, we, the fan, are also kind of to blame. How? What am I talking about? Why are we, the fans, also to blame? Okay. A young blonde girl, teenager, comes out doing almost nothing but being very organic with her voice and singing. Now, she's had a lot of success, but people either love her or hate her. Who am I talking about? Billie Eilish. She is a young, creative girl with the help of her brother, was able to strike a chord with the public with the use of her voice. Oh, wait, I don't like that vocal style. It's weird. Or she uses auto-tune. Uh-oh, the A word. Auto-tune. The world has embraced the digital age in music, unless you use it on someone's voice. You see the conundrum? The world has thrown organic music into the trash and said, digital world, we embrace you! But then someone uses that digital technology to erase a flat note and they discard everything that singer does. Fortunately, and yes, I actually say fortunately, the world, for the most part, has embraced Billie Eilish. Why do I think that that's positive? And I'm not a gigantic fan of her music, but I like the fact that she's just singing and people are liking it. Now, if you're in your 40s and 50s and you don't like her music, at least like the fact, please, that she's famous for singing. For singing, yes, the very thing that you thought couldn't be done anymore. And here's the beautiful thing. Her brother used digital technology to produce and write the music essentially in his bedroom. Now, I've also heard people say, I don't like Billie Eilish because she looks depressed. I'm sorry. I was raised in the 80s and 90s, all right? And I know that my parents were raised in the 60s. And maybe we today don't identify with that look. And I don't identify with that depressed look. I don't. But we live in an age where youths are growing up raising themselves, either because their families are broken or both parents are working, and now youths are raising themselves and left alone to figure stuff out in a very complex world. So whatever she did struck a chord with a lot of people. Her look, her image. And if she has an image that's going to shoot her into success, and she wants to have success in music and doesn't use that image, then people will question her sanity. So whatever the case is, she's ridiculously famous. And she has a vocal style. She's famous because of her vocal style. So is rock dead? No, it exists. Barely. But is organic music dead? It's dying. It's kind of dead. But then when someone gets notoriety for being organic, people come out of the woodwork to murder them with critical words. This is not 1970, 80, or 90. It's not even the year 2000 anymore. It's 2021. You can produce an album on your PC in your bedroom by accident. Music is distributed all over the place, and it's essentially free. Do I like it like that? I don't know. As a consumer, why the heck not? But no one goes to music stores anymore. And if you do, then I'll see you at Blockbuster at noon and we'll talk about the old times. But the truth is, if you want to find music that you like as a listener, then you have to look for it. There's tons there for everyone. But just don't expect it to jump out at you and hit you in the analog face like Abbey Road did back in 1969. Music doesn't work like that anymore. But after all this being said, I am a gigantic fan of organic music. You'll hear me say it over and over again. But then again, I go out and look for it, and then try to share it when I find it. But I also love electronica, especially when they include other sorts of things like tango. There's a band from Argentina called Bajo Fondo. It's like tango electronica. I think some members are from Argentina and some are from Uruguay. I love it. Love it. It's creative and fun. And you know what else it is? My opinion. My taste. But I do something important in 2021. I make a big effort to look for music because it is not going to seek me out. And the stuff that does seek us out is usually very canned, overly produced, and very well supported and promoted by people who have the money to promote it. So in conclusion, Organic music will someday make a comeback in all of its genres. But it will be because people have decided to prove to the music world that it is worth listening to. Then more people will get behind it. It's already turning around. I can see it. Then you'll have guitarists who do more than make YouTube videos criticizing other guitarists because they made a mistake on stage. You'll have singers and musicians who do more than make YouTube videos analyzing others who play the same instrument they play, but back in the 70s. The digital age and musicianship can meet in the middle. And it is happening. It's a transition. It won't happen overnight. It'll take time. But most importantly, it will take you, the listener, me, the listener, to swallow our pride and embrace it. Technology won't go away, but that doesn't mean organic music has to. So, just a little rant from Artie Astor on this episode of B Sharp and C. What exactly should we B Sharp and C? We should B Sharp and C that rock and roll isn't necessarily dying. Organic music is. But it's making a comeback. We have to be there to embrace it when it does.
I've seen